Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Wednesday morning weekly Tanya Shir. We're holding at the beginning of Perek Yud Aleph of Tanya. Today is the second day of Tammuz, Tovshin Pei Vav. That is June 17th, 2026. We are learning about the struggle, the battle, the war that takes place between the Nefesh Elikis and the Nefesh Abamis, and it's, for most of us, it's an ongoing, never-ending battle that rages within us. In Perek Tes, the Alter Rebbe spent the first 8 prokim of Tanya, explaining to us the two sides who are at play. The Nefesh Elikis, its definition, its essence, its faculties, its garments, and all that comes along with that. The Nefesh Abamis, its faculties, its garments, the nature of its involvement with Klippa, and all that comes along with that. And then you have Perek Tes, where the Alter Rebbe describes the clash between the two, between these two powers. What each one wants, the agenda. Each one wants complete and total victory, right? They want not just the body. Each side wants not just the body of the other, but each side wants the soul. Each side wants not just to destroy the body and soul of the other, but each one wants to capture the other, bring them to use their energy, harness the energy of their opponent for their own agenda. And this is described in Perek Tes. In Perek Yud, we looked at victory. We talked about victory. What does victory look like? Victory for the Nefesh Elikis, complete and total victory, referred to as a Tzadik Gomer. A Tzadik Gomer is someone who has transformed their Nefesh Abamis completely. Nishapach L'Tov has been transformed into good. Or incomplete victory, Tzadik She'eino Gomer, where the Tzadik has victory over his Nefesh Abamis, but the Tzadik has not managed to properly transform it for whatever reason, which we discussed in Perek Yud. And that's what Perek Yud looks like. Amazingly, Perek Yud is dedicated to victory. In Perek Yud Aleph, the Alter Rebbe talks about defeat. Very interesting. What does defeat look like? Defeat meaning, what happens when the Nefesh Abamis wins? Then the individual is referred to, in the context of the Tanya, the individual is referred to as a Rasha. Now again, when we hear the word Rasha, we get alarmed, right? Rasha sounds like a terrible ganef, a terrible person, Rahman al-Slan, a murderer, a rapist. Rasha is a very harsh term. But that's not what we mean in this case. In this case, what we mean is that, again, as we'll discuss, to one degree or another, the Nefesh Abamis is victorious in this battle between the two kings. The Nefesh Abamis is victorious. So to this end, we dedicate, the Alter Rebbe dedicated Perek Yud Aleph, and then of course we'll get to Perek Yud Beis, which is really where the Alter Rebbe is really headed to. Perek Yud Beis is the Beinoni. The Beinoni is the one in which, in a sense, nobody wins and nobody loses. It's sort of, in a sense, the ultimate stalemate, if you will. And it's to this Beinoni, that the Alter Rebbe actually dedicated the entire Sefer HaTanya, because because the Beinoni is just where we strip everything away, and we're just left with this very struggle itself, right? Everything else is gone. No one wins and no one loses. It's like, again, I'm calling it stalemate. In other words, where we seem to, after everything we've gone through, we get to a place where we're just, pardon the expression, where we're just stuck. That's the Beinoni. That's going to be Perek Yud Beis. But for now, Perek Yud Aleph. For now, we'll learn Perek Yud Aleph. Perek Yud Aleph is about defeat. What happens when the Nefesh Abamis wins? Which is interesting that Alter Rebbe would dedicate an entire Perek to this. But here it is. In Perek Yud, the Nefesh Elikis. In Perek Tes, the battle. In Perek Yud, victory. In Perek Yud Aleph, defeat. Okay, turns out Chassidus has a lot to say about defeat as well. We'll learn this in Mitzvah Hashem. Okay, I just want to say one more point concerning Perek Yud, then Bez Hashem will move on. So in Perek Yud we learned that the definition of a tzaddik gomer is one who has transformed his nefesh abamis completely in his hapach l'tov. He transformed it into good, right? The Alter Rebbe says these type of tzaddikim are very few. They're called bnei aliyah. There's very few of them. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, right, it's just me and my son, or Isi bnei aliyah v'hem u'atim. But I heard my father Zalzangizon told me that there was a Polish Rebbe, one of the Rebbes from the other Hasidic groups, once asked the Rebbe, "What's the avodah of a tzaddik? What's his avodah?" Besides, in other words, he didn't just control his nefesh abamis. He didn't just kill his nefesh abamis. He didn't just capture its soul. He even transformed the whole thing into positive. So if you transform the whole thing into positive, so he asked the Rebbe, "What's the avodah?" Right? What? In other words, imagine you wake up one morning and you want to say Moedani, and you say it with tremendous chayas, and then you wash negelvasser and you go about your day. You do everything you're supposed to do, and every part of you is enjoying it and delving deeper into it, and you learn and you daven and you work and you serve Hashem, and everything goes well. Right? Everything goes well. So besides for the fact that it makes a very boring story, right? So like what people struggle with this sometimes when it comes to understanding the times of Mashiach. So everything will go well. All the lights will be green always. There'll be no problems. Nothing ever. Yeah. So what's life all about? Right. So besides for the fact it's difficult to understand, how's that just not the most incredibly boring existence? No tension, no pushback, nothing. No self-doubt, no self-sabotaging, no bad tendencies, no bad thoughts, no bad words, nothing. Besides for the fact it's difficult to understand, like where's the stimulation in that? Where's like the even enjoyment in that? So he asked the Rebbe, where's the avodah? Where's the avodas Hashem? Avodas Hashem, to some degree, you have to break yourself. You have to force yourself. But where's there to break yourself and force yourself if every part of you wants it? So the Rebbe answered that the avodah, the struggle, is to go beyond the limitations of his nefesh elokis. So the Rebbe said, to go beyond the limitations, which is just truly wild. So the Rebbe said, in other words, even the nefesh elokis, I guess, as we perceive it, it also has certain limitations. And the avodah would be to go beyond that. Maybe this is similar to the famous story where the Chassid said to the Tzemach Tzedek that he has a problem. Right? The famous story, Chos came to Tzemach Tzedek, he said he has a problem. What's the problem? He says, I don't want to learn. I have no cheshek. I have no enjoyment. I have no enjoyment in learning. I know I'm supposed to. I know I have to. But I just have no cheshek. I just have no enjoyment in it. And the Tzemach Tzedek said, you have a problem that you have no enjoyment in learning? You don't have a problem. I'm the one who has the problem. What's your problem? Tzemach Tzedek said, I'm the one who has the problem because I do enjoy learning. End of story. You think you have a problem that you don't enjoy learning? That's not a problem. That's a good thing that you don't. I'm the one who says to myself that has a problem. What should I do that I do enjoy, that I do have a cheshek, that I do enjoy and want and appreciate it? That's the story. And the wisdom of the story, at least on a simple level, is that what the Tzemach Tzedek was saying is if a person wants to learn, then there's no avodah involved. Of course he learns because he wants to. There's no real avodah involved. The avodah is when you don't want to, when you force yourself. Then there's avodah. The Rebbe once said, by the way, the Rebbe once commented on this story, that a person who doesn't want to learn and forces themselves to learn ends up with a deeper understanding. They actually end up, even pushed from an understanding perspective, they master the ideas on a deeper level intellectually than if the person wants to learn. It's interesting. The Rebbe didn't explain why, but that's what he said. And the simple meaning is because if you want to learn, so then you're basically just running on autopilot. If you don't want to and you have to force yourself, so then you reveal much deeper koiches from within yourself. So I'm saying it's a similar idea over here. The avoid of the tzaddik, even the tzaddik gomer, is to go beyond the limitations of their ownership. That's what the Rebbe said. Okay. And now we'll learn Perek Yud Aleph, and Perek Yud Aleph is what happens when the Nefesh Abamis wins. What happens for those of us who are in the category of Rishoyim, according to Tanya, Most of us, or maybe I should just say me, most of us are in the category of what the Alter Rebbe will call Rosh V'Tovloi. So this talks to all of us. Excuse me. The Eibishter created the world in such a way where there's always Zel Umazeh, there's always, for every power in Kedusha, there's an equal and opposite and maybe even more powerful element in L'Umazeh, in the negative side. Zel Umazeh, Rosh V'Tovloi, corresponding to a Rosh V'Tovloi. Excuse me, Zel Umazeh, Rosh V'Tovloi, L'Umas Tzadik V'Raloi. The contrast, the flip side of the Tzadik V'Raloi. We learned before in Perek Yud. The incomplete tzaddik, you have Rosh V'Tovloi, you have the incomplete Rosh. What does this mean? On the one hand, it means he's a Rosh Shatov Shebenafshe Elokis, the good, the godliness, which is in his nefesh Elokis, Shebemoicha, in his brain. Ubachol Leimon and the right ventricle of his heart, as we learn that's where the nefesh Elokis is. Kofuf ubotul agabe hara me'aklipa shebechol lasmoli. Somehow the klipa, the ra, the evil, the klipa shebechol lasmoli in the left ventricle of the heart, the nefesh abamis, has a stronghold over the nefesh elikis. Kof, and the nefesh elikis is kof, it's bent over, it's subservient to the ra me'aklipa shebechol lasmoli. Okay, but the nefesh abamis is victorious. The nefesh elikis is defeated, but the defeat is not complete. It's not. If the defeat is complete, then at the end of the Perek Alter Rebbe will say there's something called Rosh V'Raloi. Rosh V'Raloi means complete, through and through, out. But in this case, where there's defeat of the nefesh elikis, but not completely, this is called Rosh V'Tovloi. And this, says the Alter Rebbe. Oh, sorry, I forgot to say the page. I'm on page 165 in the new print, or 163 in the old print. This idea, this concept of the Rosh V'Tovloi is also divided into many different levels. Tens of thousands, Alter Rebbe says. Tens of thousands of different levels. The Inyan, Kamus Ve'echos Habitul Ukfifas HaTov L'Rachas L'Shalom. How much quantitatively and qualitatively, how much the toiv, the good, the nefesh elikis, how much it is bent over and subservient to the evil. How much is the subservience? How we say defeat, but how much defeat? You have tens of thousands of different levels. Yeshmi, there are those shakfifa v'abitl etzloi ma'at miser. Sometimes the Alter Rebbe says it's the defeat is very, very, very small, exceedingly minor. And it's not even, the defeat is not even consistent. It doesn't even happen often. Once in a while. The evil overpowers the good, and conquers this little city. Not even the entire city. Just a little bit of the city, just a little bit of the guf. That it should be subject to its discipline. And it becomes a chariot for the nefesh abamis, ulavush, and a garment. Maybe just one out of the three garments of the nefesh abamis. Maybe just an action. To do some light type of avera. Not a harsh, difficult avera, a very light one. Or just to say something. To speak something that isn't even actually lashon hara. It's just avak lashon hara. Avak lashon hara means the dust of lashon hara. V'leitzonus, or a shtickle joke, ukahai gavna. Or even just a machshava, a thought. Hirhurei avera. They don't actually do anything or say anything. They just think about it. But Chazal say Hirhurei avera, koshemei avera. Thoughts about an avera in some sense are even worse than the avera itself. Oy b'machshava levad hirhurei avera, koshemei avera, v'gam she'oiver al azhara satayra v'nishmartu mikol davar rosh lo yihar b'yom. In which case he violates even to think. Even to think. Sorry, the guy skipped. Even if the person is not actually contemplating on chas v'shalom doing anything, they're not thinking about actually. It's a sin b'machshava, right? It's a sin b'machshava. It's not, the person is not contemplating on doing anything. The person is having lustful types of thoughts, but not the type of thoughts that would lead them to do anything, just conceptually. In which case he violates a biblical mitzvah. The Gemara says you shouldn't think about these things. Or if it's time for the person to study Torah, and he wastes his time. Says the Mishnah says, if a person is awake at night and he has energy and he has ability and he has time to study Torah, but instead of using the time productively, he wastes it. Hear the words. Any one of these things, this is sufficient to classify, to consider the person a Rosha at that time. Why? Because this doesn't come from the nefesh elokis, right? This doesn't come from the nefesh. It's not possible to actually lose the battleground even a little bit, and to violate something b'machshava, b'dibur, or b'maisa, on whatever level. They did something they weren't supposed to do. They said something they weren't supposed to do. They thought something they weren't supposed to do. They didn't say, do, or think something they should have. They wasted a moment of time they could have used for Torah. This doesn't come from the nefesh habamis. This doesn't come from the nefesh elokis. This means that the nefesh habamis has some victory over here. This, says the Alter Rebbe, as far as the Tanya is concerned, this is enough to classify the person as a Rosha. Albeit, because the victory is not complete, the victory that is for the nefesh habamis is not complete, we're going to call the person a Rosha v'toivloi. And the Alter Rebbe says there's a very, very large spectrum, tens of thousands of different levels of the ratio, how much toiv there is and how much Rosha there is. On the minimal level, the victory for the defeat of the nefesh elokis is tiny, seemingly tiny. One moment, one thought, one word, one action. But yet that would be, and the rest of it is all toiv. Yet that would be enough to consider the person a Rosha v'toivloi. The Alter Rebbe goes on to say, and afterwards, after the person has committed the sin, immediately the nefesh elokis overpowers. And the person regrets what they did. And they ask for forgiveness, and atonement from Hashem. And Hashem for sure forgives him. As long as he does a proper tshuva, based on the way Chazal explained, as long as the person does complete the tshuva, Hashem forgives them. But for that moment they sinned. For that moment they sinned. And so the Alter Rebbe says, for this moment, the fact that the person sinned in this sense, this would be enough to consider them a Rosha. Okay. I want to talk about this for a few minutes. We'll continue inside in Mitzvah Hashem next week, but I want to dissect this for a few minutes because this is a theme. This is a theme that came up in Perek Aleph, and now it's coming up again in Perek Yud Aleph. And when we first hear it, it's not, it doesn't feel good. The person doesn't feel good to be told you're a Rosha, right? I shouldn't say you, I should say I. It doesn't feel good. For one infraction, it makes me a Rosha. And especially the person does teshuva right after that. Yeah, but still at some point later on, again, they're vulnerable, they may experience another setback. All right, Rosha v'toivloi, right? But a Rosha nonetheless. I want to try to explain what's... You have a similar sentiment on On the first page of Tanya, what Alter Rebbe goes on to say, right? You waste 1 second of Bittul Torah, you're a Russia. You do one Aveira, you're a Russia. One Isid Rabbanon, a Russia. Even you don't do anything wrong, but you could have stopped somebody else, and you didn't. You're a Russia. I mean, what's? We're all Rashoy, Mazel Tov. Now what? I'm going to try to explain what do we take from this? The Baalei Musar like to say, after 120, a person goes upstairs. Okay. What happens when you go upstairs? There's a great Yom Adin, there's a great day of judgment. There's a great day of judgment. And then, depending on how the person lived their life, they go to Gan Eden, Chas v'Sholom the opposite. Very scary. A day of truth, a day of reckoning. The Baalei Musar like to say, we have the whole thing, we have a misconception b'chlal of the whole thing. There aren't chambers, and there aren't, fiery angels with pitchforks and who look red with horns on their head and fire coming out of their mouth. We got the whole thing wrong. No fire coming out of anybody's mouth. So what happens? It's very pashut. Very pashut. What happens is, when a person goes l'mayla, I'll give it to you the words the way I heard it, because it made a strong impression on me. A person goes upstairs, they take him into a very comfortable room, they sit him down, and they show him 2 movies. One movie, the life that they lived. The whole thing from beginning to the end. The other movie is the life that they could have lived. The potential. That's it. Everybody is forced to sit through exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. The life you lived, the life you could have lived. Now, what is that? Gan Eden or Gehenna? Well, it depends. If we actualized our potential, then it's Gan Eden. If we didn't, then it's Gehenna. I'll explain a little bit more what I'm trying to say. In the business world, lahavdil, they have the following analogy, right? A guy buys a ton of apples, right? He buys it for, I don't know, how much does a ton of apples sell for? He buys it for, $10,000, right? He goes to the marketplace, he buys it for $10,000, he goes to the marketplace, sells it for $30,000. Made $20,000 profit. He comes home, he celebrates. $20,000, Vishtam. He's so excited, made money, Baruch Hashem, sponsors a kiddush, he's in a good mood, he treats his children to a treat, he takes his family out for dinner. Whew. One day, one deal, spent $10,000, right? Bought something for 10, sold it for $20,000 profit. Pays his credit card bills. I mean, feels like $1 million. Listen carefully. Goes to the marketplace the next day. The next day, the price of apples rise. The next day, the price of apples is selling a ton of apples. The one he sold the day before for $30,000 is now selling for $60,000. Which means he now has to face the reality that had he waited one more day, he would have made not a profit of $20,000, he would have made a profit of $50,000. Now he goes home and he's miserable. He's miserable. He's angry. He's upset. His family can't talk to him. He's tearing his hair out of his head. Zogan Allah Chachamim, all the Chachamim say, again, you follow what happened? He bought a ton of apples for $10,000 one day. He sold it the next day for $30,000. Made $20,000 profit. The following day, the price of apples went through the roof. And a ton of apples now selling for $60,000. If he would have waited an extra day, he could have made More than twice the amount of money. 2.5 times. But he didn't know. He's not he doesn't know the future. He didn't know. So the first, when he sold it and made a $20,000 profit, he was celebrating. It was Simchas Torah. The next day, when he realized that he lost $30,000, Tisha B'Av. One second. Say all the Chachamim. Whoa. Time out. Hold on. This doesn't make any sense. The guy is sitting there the next day and saying, I lost $30,000. I lost because if I would have held on to the schayr, if I would have held on to the merchandise another day, I would have made an additional thing. Okay. But you didn't actually lose $30,000. You just didn't make $30,000. Okay. The $20,000 profit is still $20,000 profit. So it now turns out that you could have made more if you would have waited, but you had no way of knowing, right? So why are you miserable? You still made $20,000. Person is angry at the world, looks at himself and his wife and says, I have no mazel, nothing works in my life, I feel like a loser. Idiot! Yesterday you were sitting there going, I'm king of the world, I just made $20,000 on one deal. And today you're angry and miserable at the world? Yeah. All right, I'm not saying it should be this way or it shouldn't be this way. What I'm trying to say is everything needs context. Is something a success or a failure? Depends on the context. Compared to what? People will often ask other people, I get this question all the time. Should I do X, Y, Z? Right? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do a certain thing? And very often the answer, the way I like to answer, the person says, should I do X, Y, Z? Then I say to the person, I say, or what? What are you going to do? Should I make a campaign to save the whales, to save the tigers, to save I don't know what? Or what? What are you going to do if you don't invest your time, your resources, and your energy into this? Are you going to waste it? If you're going to waste it, then it's better to do something even moderately productive. If the question is, should I do something moderately productive or very productive, you should always do something that's more productive. But if the question is, should I waste my time or do something a little bit productive, of course, always one is better, one is more than zero, one is infinitely more than zero. But it's not two, but it's not zero. So when the person makes $20,000 profit and they think to themselves, I bought this for 10, I sold it for 30, I'm such a groiser chacham, right? They feel empowered, they feel successful because their frame of reference is that the day before they bought it for $10,000, the next day they sold it for 30. But when the next day it goes up to 60, now they're comparing themselves to what they could have been on the following day, compared to what they could have been on the following day. They lost $30,000. They lost the opportunity. They lost $30,000. Okay, I'm not here to give you business advice because I don't have any, but I'm here to bring out a point. What's this obsession that we keep referring to the Jew as a Russia? One Aveira, Russia. One Bittul Torah, Russia. What? This is supposed to encourage us, not discourage us. But it's not a discouraging message. In fact, it's a very empowering and inspirational message. It's a very empowering and inspirational message. What are we trying to do by telling the person you're a Russia? We're trying to tell the person you're capable of more. Don't settle. Don't settle. A Jew goes, I have an Nefesh Habamis. I have temptation. I have all sorts of things. I have limitations. We tell you, no, these are not real limitations. These are perceived limitations. The truth of the matter is, if you would get to be able to watch what you could be, your potential, you would be operating at a different frequency. The Nefesh Elikis comes to the Nefesh Habam. The Nefesh Habam comes to the Nefesh Elikis and says, listen to me, I'm very powerful, I'm a behemoth. I'm a bulvan. I'm an ox. I'm an ox with a bad temper, or a bad temptation, or I got whatever it is arsenal, whatever it is tools that the Nefesh Habamis has in its arsenal. The Nefesh Abamis has a farbrengen with the Nefesh, a negative farbrengen with the Nefesh. He says, listen to me, Nefesh Elokis. Don't fight me. Give in a little bit. I don't need the whole thing. You want to learn and you want to do your thing. You want to gesundheit. The Nefesh Abamis says, listen, I'm also employed by God. Do you understand? I also have to report to my employer. Give me a little victory, a little one. Give me a little one. And I'm telling you, the rest of the day you can have. There's a Yiddish joke about a guy who gets caught stealing. He steals from his neighbor, from his friend, but he's still stealing money. So they catch him red-handed. So they say to him, they catch him, say to him, what's going on? The guy says, I need the money, I'm desperate. He said, how long have you been doing this? He said, how long have I been doing this? I'm doing it for years already. They said, but everybody thought that you're such a respectable, dignified person. Turns out you're a schmutzig ganef, you're a dirty thief. We all had such a high opinion of you. He said, listen, for 29 and a half days of the month, for 29 days and 23 hours and 59 minutes of every month, I'm a very respectful and honorable, dignified person. It's just 1 minute. It's just this 1 minute I'm a ganef. The rest of the month, a minute. The Nefesh Abamis comes to the Nefesh Elokis. Give me a minute. Give me a piece. Give me, let me be who I am. Let me be myself for an hour a day, 2 hours a day, an hour a week, an hour a month, an hour a year. Nefesh Abamis says, I want to sometimes just, all the time you're hacking me, do this, do that. I want to breathe a little. Give me breathing. The Nefesh Abamis says to the Nefesh Elokis, give me a little bit of breathing room, elbow room. Very tempting argument. And the Nefesh Abamis says, I'll leave you alone. Afterwards you can do whatever you want. Learn the daven 4 hours. I won't fight you. Gesundheit. It's a very tempting offer because the battle exhausts us. It can exhaust us if we don't do it right. The battle can be exhausting. The Alter Rebbe will reframe the battle in such a way that the battle is empowering, not exhausting. The battle gives us strength, doesn't take strength away. But that's also a level. Until we get there, it's very tempting to be told by the Nefesh Abamis, listen, I'll leave you alone, just give me, you make a shtickle concession. What's the problem? All right, there's two problems. First of all, the Nefesh Abamis is a liar, right? The Nefesh Abamis is not, when you give in a little bit to the Nefesh Abamis, it never ends there. Nefesh Abamis, right? There's an expression in Chazal, Ein odom meis v'chetzi tavoisa b'yodeh. Nobody ever dies and fulfilling even 50% of their temptations, because no matter how much you fulfill, the Nefesh Abamis always doubles the quota the next day. So first of all, the Nefesh Abamis is lying, on a practical level, right? No matter what it tells you, give me this, give me that, I'll be accommodating. They'll be accommodating for 5 minutes, and then the demands increase, right? You ever lived with an abuser, with a narcissist, with an evil person? It's never good enough. It's never good enough, at least not permanently. Sometimes you get short respite, you get times of respite, but it never lasts. So that one, the Nefesh Abamis is poshut lying. Okay, point one. Point two, the Alter Rebbe says you're missing the point. You're missing the point. What do you mean give in a little bit? What do you mean steal once a month? The Yid has to turn around to the Nefesh Abamis and say, one moment of defeat, it's not a technical defeat. It's not a defeat. I did something, I said something, I thought something. The battle here is not, the battle between the Nefesh Elokis and the Nefesh Abamis is not just what the person says, does and thinks. It's a battle of a definition. I'm not a Nefesh Abamis Yid, I'm a Nefesh Elokis Yid. This ton of apples, Vimazot, it's not worth $30,000. It's worth $60,000. Right now I can only get 30, right now, but tomorrow I'll be able to get 60. The Kotzker Rebbe said very famously, the Nefesh Abamis gets a person to sin but it doesn't really want the person, doesn't really care so much for the sin. The little sin is nothing. Not nothing, but that's not what it's after. The Kotzker Rebbe said the Nefesh Abamis knows that after the Jew sins, the Jew gets depressed. That's what the Nefesh Abamis wants. That's where the big victory is. Moirdik Avort. Moirdik. Awesome. It's awesome. You come to the Nefesh Abamis with the Nefesh Abamis, the tiny little victory. Yeah. Okay. Again, the Nefesh Abamis is employed. That's its job. But the Nefesh Abamis is more interested in the connotations of this tiny little victory. Says the Nefesh Abamis, tell me that you're mine, that I have control. Zog adu bista behema. Just say it every now and say, the truth is I'm a behema. That's what the Nefesh Abamis. Definition. That's what we're really after here. Definition. And to this end, the Alter Rebbe dedicates an entire chapter that a person should see these victories of the Nefesh Abamis as a Rosh V'Tovlei, meaning, on the one hand, it's a victory of the Nefesh Abamis. On the other hand, the Yiddish turn around and go, nope, I'm bigger than this. I'm bigger than this. I'm greater than this. This defeat, this moment of weakness is superficial. This moment of weakness and of defeat it doesn't define me. Tomorrow I can get up, in 5 minutes from now I can get up and I can shake it, and my nefesh elokis can fight and can live to see another day. The Rebbe pushed so much, the Rebbe pushed it so hard, that when you talk to a Yid about Yiddishkeit, about Chassidus, whatever it is that we're talking about, the message should never be, here, let me give you something. Let me offer you something. Let me offer you a mitzvah. Let me offer you a chelek in olam haba. Let me offer you a vort Chassidus. Let me offer you something. Never. The message is always the opposite. Let me uncover this within you. I think this is the wisdom. This is the wisdom, or at least part of it, in referring to this Yid as a Rasha. What's the meaning? What's a Rasha? A Rasha is a person who's off their game. A Rasha is a sinner, right? You wouldn't say, you never call a behema a sinner. Right? When one behema attacks another behema and tears it to pieces, what do you say? The behema is a sinner? It's not a sinner. He's just doing what it was programmed to do. It's just following its nature. So the Nefesh Abamis comes to every one of us and says, you're a behema. The Nefesh Abamis wants us to see us this way. Maybe a very sophisticated behema. Maybe a behema that can learn and daven and perform at the highest of levels. But every now and then, we have to tell the truth. The truth is that we're a behemoth. That's what the Nefesh Abamis wants. That's what these tiny little victories of the Nefesh Abamis represent. And the combat, the answer to that is to say to the Yid, at that moment of your defeat, you're a Rasha, meaning you've rebelled, bagadata, you've violated your own definition of who you are. There's a famous story that I heard about the Rambam. They said that the Rambam had a debate with the other scientists or doctors or, at the time who were serving the Sultan about whether or not a certain animal could be trained. The Rambam said, this particular animal, I heard it about a cat, whatever, a particular animal. The Rambam said, this particular animal cannot be trained. The other Chacham says, what are you talking about? Of course we could train it. So the Maisa goes that they decided to prove, they were always jealous of the Rambam, so they decided to prove him wrong. So they found a particular animal, they found one animal that they were arguing over, and they put it through, full training. They got grosser professionals, and they trained it, and they rewarded it, and they trained the whole thing. And they trained it to stand up on its hind legs, and to hold up a drink or a piece of food or something like that in its hand, with a towel draped over its arm, and to walk into the Sultan and to present it to the Sultan. And they made a grand ceremony, and everybody came, and the Sultan is sitting there on his throne, and this animal walks in, with a bow tie and music in the background, and this thing walks across the room, with the drink or the food in his hand, and it walks over to the Sultan, and it's about to give it to the Sultan. So the Rambam had come prepared. So as soon as this cat or whatever this animal is walking down, the Rambam has somebody release a mouse or a rat or something like that, should run right in front of the pathway where this cat is walking. So the cat is, has all of this training, but as it's walking down, this little reptile runs by in front of it. The cat, sees a meal for itself. The cat throws the tray of food that it was carrying, throws the drink into the air, the bow tie goes flying, the cat pounces on all four and takes off after this mouse or this rat, and boom, off it goes. So that the Rambam could prove his point, Hestus, that this animal cannot be trained. So after the Rambam made his point, the Rambam says, I didn't mean you can't train it at all. Of course you could train it a little, you could train it superficially. I just meant you cannot train it reliably. Can't rely on it. The tiniest thing, something that's true to its nature, will throw it off, and as soon as it sees a mouse or a rat, the cat becomes a cat all over again, and off it goes. You have many such Chassidish Amaisis that bring up the same point. The Nefesh Abamis' argument is, what are you hacking at me at China like you're some kind of holy roller? You're not a holy roller. You're a person who learn and daven and serve Hashem. You're a behemoth. At the end of the day, if you pay attention, that's the message, right? It's the word, the Kotzker Rebbe's word. After the Aveira, the person gets depressed. Why the person gets depressed? Because they see this Aveira as a reflection of who they are. The Alter Rebbe dedicates an entire parak of Tanya to this. Listen to me, says the Alter Rebbe. You had a moment, you had a difficult moment, and maybe you had more than one. But always remember, says the Alter Rebbe, as a Yid, that in these moments you've rebelled, you've turned your back on your own true identity. We're going to call you a Rasha v'toivle. If it gets really bad, we may even call you a Rasha v'raloi. But even by virtue of calling you this itself is our way of telling you, listen, you've got to. The context is important. The context is important. You've got to be able to see the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that every Yid is a chelek l'kamim al mamash. Yes, sent to this world to wrestle with all sorts of tests and challenges and successes and failures, v'chula v'chula. But we may never allow Yiyush, right? Yiyush means to become despondent, to give up. Which means the person goes, it's okay. You met those people? This is what I'm capable of. That's it. To accept a certain limitation. Tonight is Gimel Tammuz. I want to say this. The Rebbe taught us and instilled within us and drilled to never accept any types of limitations. Not self-imposed limitations, not limitations put on us from the outside. Never. Doesn't matter the past, doesn't matter the future, doesn't matter nothing. A Yid is a chelek l'kamim al mamash. A Yid is a piece of godly, divine energy. That's what a Yid is. Have a wonderful week. We'll continue next week in Mitzvah Hashem.